Hello, and welcome back. This is more deep diving and general tips and tricks. So, we are going over overriding functions today. So, if you've watched some of my other general tips and tricks videos, you might have seen, I might have mentioned that in one part, it's very easy, or it'd be very nice to override the two string method of a lot of things. And honestly, for structs, I would argue that it's probably always essential to override your two string method. And so for one of them, I think it was the zip code. I had like this output function that essentially would have been a call to the two string method and would have formatted it really nicely for something on the UI. When you eventually print this out to the UI. So I just wanted to kind of show what that looks like when you actually code that out, and just kind of tell people that this is an option to do, and more people should do it. I see a lot of what I did with the output functions and stuff, and it's like, no, just override the two string method, because your two string method, for if you aren't aware, for your every object gets a default two string method, and that two string method just prints out pretty much like the C# name of the class. So this would be like general tips and tricks dot overriding functions dot phone number would be what the printout would be of the two string on this. And it's like, that's not very useful for debugging. You can easily do a code search for phone number and find where that is in your code, but what's more useful would be probably to print out what the phone number would actually be. So I just wanted to kind of go through what it would take to implement it. It's actually really, really simple, and lots more people should use this override. I don't see it a lot in C#. I think in Python, people do it a lot more, and there's a lot of frameworks that will do that for you. But yeah, I think that people should use this method, should override the two string method constantly. It helps you do your comparisons a lot better. People should override the less than and greater than and equals, the comparator operators, and the not equal to comparator operator. Or the comparator, like you should override all of these things to make your lives easier. And these are the only section of functions that I think are appropriate to put inside of structs, are overrides of kind of comparator operators and the two-string method, or the hash function. So I'm just going to talk about the two-string method in this video. I'm sure I'll show you comparator overrides in future videos. But yeah, I don't want to make this video super long. I just wanted to kind of say that that's the only rule. When I say that like classes and struct should try to follow kind of like one function, so struct should just store data and classes should operate on it. Well, this is like the one thing where I'm like, oh, okay, a struct can also manipulate the form of data and show it and display it in nice ways. And so don't go overboard with this. Like I say, you're mostly the only functions you'll define for a struct are overrides, in my opinion, and in my experience. But yeah, so this is just an example of an override that you would do. But once again, try not to make a lot of functions inside of structs. It just kind of, it starts to defeat the purpose of it storing data. So anyway, we set up like a normal problem. We're storing a phone number in it. I've already gone over some of the limiting types, limiting your type and choosing the right type. So please check out those videos for if you want to understand just like why I choose the certain data types I do when I'm coding this out. But we're going to kind of go ahead and dive right in. So for a phone number in the US, I'm going to assume that we don't have that like +1 at the front of our phone number, but a phone number in the US usually might look like 123 123 -1234. That's what the usual phone number looks like for typing into your cell phone to get to a certain person. So we have the first section, which is the area code for your phone number, and then the second section, which is kind of like it's another 3-digit section, and then the last section, which is a 4-digit section. So we're just going to go ahead and delineate that out, because maybe certain outputs, especially if we're making this for something that's going to input to a UI. There are certain UIs that require you to type those all out separately. I think this is actually the one thing that has evolved over time, is that you no longer have to split them all out. Like, you can just put them all in one go, including the parentheses. And I'm like, that's a really nice advancement. But we'll just assume that they're all split out into 3 parts. So, okay, yeah, I'll be good. So here we'll say, and actually I'll go ahead and get in the habit of event area code, event second part, third. Okay, cool. I don't actually know what those names are, but I would totally look them up and find out what they actually are when you were coding this. Okay, cool. So this is what our phone number struct looks like. This is sufficient for storing that data into it. We can make a constructor, but I'm not going to do that because we have a default one. But yeah, like I say, I want to just show you what it would look like to print out this phone number right now. So I'm going to go down here and make a unit test so I can show you what it looks like. So overriding functions tests. Okay, we'll add a class test. No, well, actually it might. Yeah, okay. Overriding functions test. Okay. Cool. And then we'll just say I am using the general tips and tricks dot overriding functions tests. Cool. So when I come down here, public void func test. Sorry, I'm being a little bit. No, I gotta be good for y'all. Or so we're just gonna do a printout of phone number printout test. So it's actually a great example to make a test. So let's just say that we have some values, unit, and we have the first value equal to 1, 2, 3, and then we have unit val2, which is equal to 1, 2, 3. All right, maybe we'll be good here. We'll say 4, 5, 6, and unit val3 will equal 789, 0. Cool. So we have these values here, and we're going to turn those into a phone number. So var phone number will equal new phone number and so one of the first things we see is that we cannot have access to these values because they are by default private. So we'll put public. I would even argue that you should make them read only, since phone numbers never change. Second part equals val2. Third part equals val3. Okay, so now we have our phone number stored inside of an object, and now what we want to do is we just want to make sure that the printout of that phone number is equal to what we would expect. So what I'm going to do is assert dot r equal. So we would expect it to come out to us as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And we'll do phone number dot to string and make sure that they are equal. Cool. So that's our test. And now let's just go see if it gives us that. So I'll build my project, make my test appear over here. Okay, I blinked. Oops, I don't have the test attribute. Gotta build again. And now it's here. And when I run it, I get a failure. So if I look at the error message, see, so the string length, yada yada, expected this number, but it got this. So like I told you, so what I got was just the general tips and tricks overriding functions dot phone number. So I told you that, you know, you can give me props for that. I know I was able to predict exactly what the function would look like, or what the printout would look like there. So that obviously is not useful to us. Like I said, we could easily search for phone number in our code base and find this. So what we would like to do is we would like to print out a much more useful override toString, or a much more useful string when we call the toString method. So one of the things that you might do is you might instantly go to code it like this, and this is kind of a C# thing, but it should probably, yeah, should make a complaint and ask us, okay, wow, it really got, this new version of Visual Studio isn't too nice to you. Okay, cool. So just in C#, we do have to add this override in front of it. I thought it was going to give me a little thing that fixes it, but I guess not. And so now we are free to override the toString method. Like I say, it's a default method. You can see in this test, I had this toString. I called that toString method. It was already, and it built just fine. It ran just fine, and this is what it prints out by default. Whereas now we are defining it as something different. So I can return anything here. And I can build this, I can run it, and when we get our error message, we can see I returned anything, and boom. So I am successfully overriding this method. So now this is where the true magic happens. Let's go ahead and print out the expected values that we would want. So I'm going to use this $sign so I can do some magic, and we'll do area code. We'll do that in parentheses. And then I'll do second part. I'll add a dash, and I'll do third part. And then I'll be printing, and we'll be on our way. We run the test, and we're all green. So that's fantastic. So we now have a much more useful toString method. If I pull the debugger out right now and run to here, and if I have my immediate window, so and this is actually really nice, like when you're in the debugger, and we'll have some videos talking about the debugger, but here in the debugger, it's already printing it out to me as a toString. So you can see that a toString of this call, like to the class, because the class didn't necessarily have this unit test doesn't have a toString override. So this is what it prints out by default. But then when we look at our object explicitly, we can see that its toString prints this out by default. And then we can go inside and actually look at the variables inside of it. So very handy for debugging is to just have that as something that you can look for as well. But yeah, like I say, when I pop out phone number, now it's giving me proper, it's giving it to me properly and printing it out to me as a nice string instead of that awful string that we had before. So So like I say, that is one example of a very useful thing to start doing to your structs. I would say, you should be deciding not to override the toString of your structs rather than not rather than trying to decide whether you should override the toString. The toString method is super useful. You use it when you're logging your stuff, and so it's very common to log things out to the just log data types out to your logs. And so if you were going to log your phone number, if you were going to log a phone number object out, like let's just say as you accessed some data type and you wanted to know, hey, like I accessed this user and this user, I wanted to know what their phone number was and their phone number came out to be this, and you want to log that somewhere. Before, if you were logging it, maybe your logging logic had to be complex because you had to pull out every value that you cared about. But now your logging logic is much simpler because someone came along and they already defined the toString method for you. So that person, if someone comes along and they forget, oh, I was supposed to do a toString call on phone number, or if someone forgets that they had to pull out all the values and add a phone number to put them into logs, your toString method is a nice backup because it's like, okay, great, So and just imagine if someone had a logging program that just did a dump of every data type that came through the function, and this function's parameter was just an object type. So any object that came into it, it logged it out. Well, because you have a toString method defined on it, it's gonna print out all the corresponding data. Whereas if it were just some random object that didn't have a toString method on it, it just wouldn't be, it would not be very useful logs for you. So, like I say, I think it should be a default action to code out your toString because it tells me exactly how I'm supposed to read this, and even kind of informs the people on the UI exactly how they should make it look on the UI. Makes the debugging a lot nicer, and just I think it's an overall helpful thing. Helps with comparison between this object and other objects that are similar to it. But like I say, I wouldn't necessarily be comparing phone numbers to each other like this, but you might want to say, do the logic of, is this phone number equal to another phone number? And because you coded the toString method, that's a lot easier logic to implement. So that is it on this video. Like I say, I want to be short and sweet on just why you should be using overrides in your structs. And like I say, just a reminder that you can override your comparison operators. So you can, and I won't remember it off the top of my head, but I think it's like, look at that. It's already helping me out. So there's the equals method that you can be overriding, and it might tell me that I have to override other things. Man, why? I just wish. I'll miss my little helper tooltip, but there's other things you can do. The equals method, you can do the hash method, which is useful for using this inside of a dictionary. So if you were going to code your dictionary up yourself, or you're going to store this inside of a dictionary, you can write your own hashing function for dealing with it. And getting the hash code can actually be a really nice, that can be really, really useful in certain situations where you want to use specific parts of the data so that it's a little bit more deterministic. So if you were building your own dictionary and it was a dictionary of phone numbers, well, you might be able to just join all these together because these are unique codes, and let that just be the hash code, and let your dictionary be a certain size. Or maybe your dictionary can just be a list, and it's just, this is just the index to that list. So, very useful things that you can kind of play around with. But yeah, like I say, this is 100% a valid use of functions to add to your structs, or just overrides, because they do make life a ton easier. Equals allows you to now start to sort using your structs, and that's a very common thing to do with structs, is to sort them and compare them to each other and all that stuff. So like I said, go look into overriding. Look at some of the common functions that you have to override from an object, and think about implementing it in your next project. It probably makes another section of your code a lot easier. And like I said, I'll show you some examples of other ways I override with structs in the future with some other code. So that is it for today. Thank you. Bye.